Oh my God! I finally W.
I was standing in the bathroom with the door locked, staring at a piece of paper that was shaking harder than my hands were. Because it wasn't my hands doing the shaking, it was the numbers. 6 of them, printed in faded gray ink on a ticket I'd bought 11 days ago at a gas station off Route 9. The same gas station I bought a ticket at every single Friday, because my father used to do the same thing. Same numbers, same store. Like a superstition passed down instead of a house or a name. I had my phone in my other hand, the lottery website still open, the winning numbers glowing on the screen, and I had checked them 4 times because a man doesn't believe a thing like this on the first look, or the second, or even the third. $10,240,000. After taxes, still more money than I'd see in 6 lifetimes of the job I worked. And the only thing I could think about, the only thing, was her face. Was I going to tell her tonight over dinner? Or was I going to wait until the weekend when her sister was here too so everyone could see it, the moment our whole life changed? I remember laughing, alone in that bathroom, a laugh that came out more like a sob, because 8 years of eating store-brand cereal so she could have name-brand shampoo, 8 years of telling her the tightness in my chest was just tired, not the second job. 8 years of us, all of it, was about to be worth something. I unlocked the bathroom door, already smiling, already halfway through the sentence in my head. Sit down, baby. I need to tell you something. And before that night ended, everything I thought I knew about my life would be gone. My name doesn't matter as much as what I carried, so I'll just tell you who I was before that Friday, because you need to understand what was riding on this ticket and why the ground didn't just crack under me. It opened up and swallowed the man I used to be. I grew up the kind of poor where you learn to be quiet about it, not the dramatic kind, the kind where the lights get shut off for 2 days and your mother tells you it's an adventure, and you play along because you're 8 and you love her, and you don't yet know what shame tastes like. My father worked concrete, big hands, cracked knuckles, a voice like gravel in a dryer. He wasn't a warm man, but he was a steady one. And steady, when you're a kid with nothing, feels like love, even when it doesn't say the word. He played the same 6 numbers every week for 11 years. Birthdays. His mother's, his father's, mine, my sister's. He used to say, "One day, boy, these numbers are going to mean something." He died 2 weeks before his 52nd birthday, on a Tuesday, of a heart that had been asking for help for years and never got it, because doctors cost money we didn't have. I kept playing his numbers after that, partly for him, partly because I didn't know how to stop believing in something he'd believed in for so long. I met my wife 9 years ago at a laundromat, which sounds like the beginning of a joke, but it's the truest thing I can tell you. She was fighting with a dryer that ate her quarters, and I fixed it because I'd fixed that same machine 100 times working there part-time through community college. She laughed at something I said. I don't even remember what. And I remember thinking, I want to hear that laugh for the rest of my life. She had this way of tilting her head when she was really listening to you, like she was trying to hear the parts you weren't saying out loud. I fell for her slow and then all at once, the way you're supposed to. We got married 2 years later, and I remembered I stood there in a suit I'd rented, and I meant every word I said to her. For richer or poorer, I meant it. I had no idea how long the poorer part was going to last, or what it would cost me to keep that promise. The first few years were hard in a way that either kills a marriage or makes it something unbreakable. I worked warehouse shifts during the day and drove for a delivery app most nights, sometimes till 1, 2 in the morning, because her father had gotten sick and the medical bills didn't care that we were young and just starting out. I never told her how bad it got. I never told her about the nights I sat in my car in a gas station parking lot, engine off to save fuel, eating a gas station sandwich for dinner so there'd be enough left for her lunch the next day. I never told her because I didn't want her carrying what I was carrying. That's not a virtue I'm bragging about. It's just what love looked like to me. Quiet and mostly invisible, and never asking for credit. There's a version of strength that people clap for, and there's a version nobody ever sees. And I lived in the second one for years. Here's the part I never told anyone, not even her, really. Every Thursday night, after she went to bed, I'd sit at the kitchen table with a legal pad and do math for 2 hours. Not fun math, survival math. Which bill could wait 10 days without a late fee, which one couldn't? How many hours of overtime I'd need to pick up to cover her sister's wedding gift, so nobody in her family would ask why we couldn't afford a $100 gift, because I didn't want her embarrassed in front of people who'd always looked at her like she'd married beneath herself. I skipped my own doctor's appointments, the ones for the chest pain that ran in my family like a bad inheritance, because the copay was $80, and $80 was groceries for a week and a half. I told her I was healthy as a horse. I said it smiling every time, because if she saw my face flinch, she'd know, and then she'd worry. And worry was a luxury I'd decided I could carry, so she didn't have to. I picked up a second job at a warehouse loading dock 2 years ago, overnight shifts, and told her it was a friend needed help moving inventory sometimes. I didn't want her to see the exhaustion and think I resented her, because I didn't, not for one single second. I resented the world for making love this expensive. Every dollar of that second job went into an envelope in my glove box labeled, in my own handwriting, "Someday her dream kitchen." She used to talk about a kitchen with an island in it, real marble, the kind you see in magazines, and she'd laugh right after and say, "That's a whole other life, not this one," like she had already made peace with never having it. I hadn't made that peace. I was quietly building toward it, one overnight shift at a time, and I never once told her because I wanted it to be a moment, not a promise I might not keep. If she had known, if any of them had known, how much of myself I was spending in the dark so that her days could stay light, I think the way people looked at me would have been different. But nobody knew. Her name was Renee, and I want to be fair to her before I tell you what she did, because she wasn't born the person she became at the end of this story. She was funny in the early years, sharp-witted, quick to laugh, the kind of woman who remembered small things, how you took your coffee, what song was playing on your worst day, and used them to make you feel seen. I loved her. I want that said clearly and without bitterness, because bitterness rots the person holding it, not the person it's aimed at. I loved her the way you love something you've decided to build your whole house around. Her best friend, a woman named Claudia, had been around since college, long before I was in the picture. Claudia was loud and warm in that big, room-filling way. Always the first to hug you, always remembering your birthday even when your own family forgot. I liked her. God help me, I liked her. She came to our wedding. She held Renee's hand at her father's funeral. She sat in my kitchen more times than I can count, eating my cooking, laughing at my terrible jokes, telling me once, with a beer in her hand and a real softness in her voice, "You are a good man. Renee got lucky." I remember exactly where I was standing when she said that. I remember believing her completely. That's what makes betrayal cut the way it does. It's never a stranger holding the knife. It's always someone who's been close enough and trusted enough to know exactly where you're soft. The cracks started small enough that I didn't recognize them as cracks. Renee started going out with Claudia more, which never struck me as strange because Renee always had a full social life, and I never wanted to be the kind of husband who put a leash on that. She started taking her phone into the bathroom when she used to leave it on the nightstand. She started leaving the room to take calls she used to take right in front of me. I noticed. Some part of me noticed and filed it away in the drawer where husbands keep the things they're not ready to look at yet, because looking at it means you might have to do something about it. And I was so tired, and so I focused on getting us out of the hole we'd been in for years, that I didn't have room left over to go looking for problems that might not even be real. Some part of me knew before that Friday night. I just didn't want to know it yet. Friday, the day everything happened, started like any other. I bought my father's numbers at the gas station on my way home from a double shift, tired down to my teeth, and I didn't even check them until 11 days later, on a whim, scrolling my phone in the bathroom because I couldn't sleep. And there they were. 6 numbers. $10 million. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and for one clean, uncomplicated hour, I was the happiest I had ever been in my entire life. I thought about her dream kitchen. I thought about the doctor's appointment I'd finally go to. I thought about my father, and how I wished more than anything that he could have been the one holding Wiss ticket instead of me, because he was the one who never got to see the numbers mean something. I came out of that bathroom already composing the sentence in my head. I walked down the hallway toward our bedroom, ticket in my pocket, heart pounding with something that finally felt like joy instead of dread. And then I heard her laugh. Not her normal laugh, a low and private one, the kind of laugh a woman gives a man she's not supposed to be alone with. I stopped outside our bedroom door, which was open maybe 6 inches, and what I saw in that gap took the $10 million in my pocket and made it feel like absolutely nothing at all. I'm not going to describe every detail of what I saw, because some things don't need to be relived to be understood. And I think you already know what a man sees when he stops outside his own bedroom door and sees his wife with someone else. I will tell you who the someone else was. It was Ray, her cousin's husband, a man who'd sat at my Thanksgiving table for 6 straight years, a man who once helped me move a couch up 3 flights of stairs and refused to take gas money for the drive, a man I would have called a friend. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I want you to understand that, because what happened in me in that moment wasn't rage. It was closer to drowning. 8 years of quiet sacrifice, of skipped doctor's visits and hidden envelopes and eating gas station sandwiches so she could have better. All of it seemed to rush up at once and ask me the same terrible question. What was any of it for? I backed away from that door without a sound. I walked out to my car, sat down in the driver's seat, and I put both hands on the steering wheel, and I didn't move for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 minutes because I stared at the clock on the dashboard the entire time, watching the numbers change, needing something, anything to hold on to that made sense. The ticket was still in my pocket, $10 million, and the one person I'd wanted to share it with had just made it very, very clear she didn't want the rest of the life that came with it, only the parts that were convenient. I drove to a 24-hour diner 2 towns over because I couldn't be in that house, and I couldn't be anywhere either of us knew. I sat in the corner booth with black coffee going cold in front of me, and I did something I hadn't let myself do in longer than I could remember. I put my face in my hands, alone, in public, and I cried the kind of crying that doesn't care who's watching, because there's a limit to how much a man can carry quietly before something in him breaks open. An older waitress, gray hair pulled back, deep lines around kind eyes, came by twice to refill my coffee without asking a single question. And the second time, she just set her hand on my shoulder for 2 seconds and walked away. I've never forgotten that. Sometimes the smallest kindness from a total stranger is the only thing holding you together in the worst hour of your life. I didn't tell Renee I'd seen anything, not that night. I went home near 2 in the morning and she was asleep, or pretending to be, and I lay next to her in the dark with a winning lottery ticket folded in my wallet on the nightstand, and I understood, clearly for the first time, what it felt like to be completely, utterly alone inside your own marriage. Quick task. If you are enjoying and believe stories like this deserve to be heard, like and subscribe to this channel. Thank you. Now, back to the story. The next morning, she acted normal, made coffee, asked if I slept okay. I said, fine. I watched her the way you watch someone you're not sure you know anymore, looking for the seams, the tells, and I found them everywhere once I let myself look. The way she angled her phone away from me, the way her eyes didn't quite meet mine when she talked about her day, the way she'd started saying we about her and Claudia in a tone that used to be reserved for me. I didn't confront her right away, and I want to explain why, because I know some of you would have blown the whole thing up on the spot. I needed to understand the shape of what I was dealing with before I did anything. I am, by nature, a man who thinks 3 steps ahead, and something in me, call it instinct, call it self-preservation, told me that whatever this was, it wasn't a single slip. It was a pattern I hadn't been looking at. So I watched. For 6 days I watched, and what I found broke something in me that I don't think will ever fully grow back the same shape. I found messages. She'd left her tablet unlocked on the counter one morning, an old habit from years ago when we had nothing to hide from each other. Messages between her and Claudia going back 4 months, and what I read in them wasn't just an affair, it was a plan. Claudia, my friend, the woman who told me I was a good man, had been the one who introduced Renee and Ray, and had been covering for them, had been telling Renee, in her own words, that she deserved better than a man who works himself into the ground for nothing, that I was never going anywhere, that Renee should get out now while she's still young enough to actually live. Get out now. Like 8 years of my life spent trying to build something for us was a sentence she was waiting to finish. I sat with that tablet in my lap for a long time. Then I found something else, something that turned the floor beneath me into something even less solid. A message from 3 weeks earlier, before I'd ever bought that ticket, where Renee told Claudia she was already talking to a lawyer just to know where I stand. And Claudia responded, "Good. Get everything set up before he even sees it coming. Don't let him have time to hide anything." They weren't just betraying my heart. They were preparing to take apart my life with the same care I'd used trying to build it. And they were doing it before I had a single clue anything was wrong. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I had to. The people closest to me weren't just hurting me by accident. They had a plan. And the cruelest part, the part that still catches in my throat when I think about it, is that none of them knew about the ticket in my wallet. None of them knew that the very week they were plotting how to take everything from me, I was about to hand them more than they ever could have imagined asking for. I didn't say a word. I put the tablet back exactly where I'd found it, screen at the same angle, and I walked outside and stood in the backyard in the cold for 20 minutes just breathing, because I needed my body to remember how. Here is where I have to tell you the truth about what almost happened. Because a story like this isn't honest if it pretends the darkest moment wasn't dark. For about 4 days, I stopped wanting to fight for anything. I went through the motions at work. I stopped checking the ticket in my wallet, stopped even letting myself think about the money, because it felt like it belonged to a life that had already ended, one where I mattered to the people around me. I remember standing in my own garage one night, staring at nothing, thinking that maybe my father's numbers had always been a kind of curse instead of a gift, because now they'd have to be split down the middle by a lawyer who was already circling before I'd even known there was blood in the water. I thought about how much of myself I had erased trying to make her comfortable. The doctor's visits I skipped, the second job I hid, the small dreams I quietly funded in secret, and how none of it had been enough to make her choose me when it mattered. That's a particular kind of grief. It's not just losing someone. It's grieving the years you spent becoming smaller so someone else could be more comfortable, and realizing they were already planning to leave the whole time. I didn't do anything reckless, because some men in my position do, and it never ends anywhere but worse. What I did instead was call my old friend Otis, a man I'd known since we were 16, who'd become a lawyer specializing in exactly the kind of thing I was suddenly, unwillingly, an expert in. I sat in his office and told him everything: the ticket, the affair, the messages, the plan Claudia had helped design. Otis listened without interrupting, the way good lawyers and good friends both know how to do. And when he finished, he leaned back in his chair and said something I'll never forget. They built their whole plan around you never seeing it coming. That's their only weapon, and you just took it away from them. That was the first moment since the diner that I felt something other than grief. It was small, it was quiet, but it was there. The turn didn't come with fireworks. It came with paperwork and patience and a decision I made alone at my kitchen table at 11 in the morning, the same table where I'd done survival math for years. I decided I wasn't going to let this ticket be one more thing that got taken from me before I even got to enjoy it. So, quietly, methodically, with Otis's help, I claimed the winnings through a legal structure that protected the money before Renee or her lawyer ever had a chance to attach it to a marital estate that was already, by her own words in writing, something she'd been planning to dissolve. I'm not going to pretend this part was purely emotional. It wasn't. It was strategic, and I make no apology for that, because the people trying to blindside me had given up their right to a fair fight the moment they started planning behind my back. At the same time, something else was happening that I hadn't expected. Word got out at my job, not about the money, but about my father's warehouse foreman noticing I seemed different, quieter, and asking if I was all right. I told him the short version. He was a man who'd buried a wife of his own to cancer years before, and he said something to me that stuck harder than anything else in those weeks. The version of you that gets rebuilt after this is going to be sturdier than the one that broke. That's not a nice saying. That's just how it works. I didn't believe him at the time. I believe him now. I moved out. Not in anger, not in a scene. Just quietly. Into a small rented apartment across town, on a night Renee was out with Claudia. I left a note. Not cruel, just true. I know, I'll be in touch through my lawyer. I didn't need the theater of a confrontation. I needed distance to think clearly, and I needed her to feel, for the first time in this whole story, what it was like to not know what was coming next. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life, harder even than the affair itself, because grief doesn't wait politely for convenient timing. I grieved my marriage. I grieved the version of Renee I thought I knew. I grieved 8 years I couldn't get back. But underneath all of it, something was being rebuilt, brick by brick, in a way that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with finally, for the first time in a decade, only having to carry the truth instead of a performance. Otis filed the paperwork carefully, quietly, weeks before Renee's own lawyer even knew the ticket existed. By the time she found out, and she did find out, because these things always come out, the money was already protected as my separate property, won and claimed entirely on my own, with a paper trail that predated any formal separation and stood on its own regardless. There was nothing left for her to attach it to. I'll never forget the day she found out. Not from me, from her own lawyer, who called her, according to what I heard secondhand later, and told her that the $10 million she and Claudia had been quietly counting on splitting in a divorce settlement legally wasn't going anywhere near her. The story goes that she showed up at my new apartment that same evening, banging on the door, mascara already running down her face before I even opened it. I opened the door and stood in the frame, not inviting her in, and let her say everything she'd come to say, that I'd hidden it from her, that I'd planned this, that I was punishing her. I let her finish. Then I told her the only thing that mattered. I didn't hide anything from you. I found out what you and Claudia had been planning 4 months before I even checked that ticket. You didn't lose this money in a divorce. You lost it the day you decided I was someone worth scheming against instead of someone worth being honest with. I watched her face change in real time, watched the anger crumble into something closer to panic, because she understood at all once that every part of the plan she and Claudia had built had assumed I would never know until it was too late. And I had known. I had simply chosen not to react the way they expected. She cried. She apologized in the way people apologize when they're mourning a consequence, not the choice that caused it. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I told her she hoped she found peace eventually, and I closed the door, gently, and I sat down on the floor of my empty apartment, and I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Still. Claudia's part in this came apart just as completely, though I played no direct part in that one. Renee's cousin, Ray's wife, found the same messages I had through channels I still don't fully know, and the marriage Ray had been so carelessly risking collapsed within the month. Claudia, the woman who'd sat at my table for 6 years, calling me a good man, while quietly helping plan my unraveling, lost her closest friendship in the fallout, because Renee, in the wreckage of everything, finally understood exactly how much of the poison in her marriage had been poured by the woman she trusted most. I heard, through mutual acquaintances, that Claudia moved out of state a year later, and that almost no one from our old circle speaks to her anymore. I take no pleasure in that. I also won't pretend it didn't feel like a form of justice arriving on its own, without my help, the way it sometimes does when you stop trying to force it. I want to be honest about something, because I think it matters more than the money ever did. I did not become a vengeful man. I had every opportunity to drag this through court, to humiliate her publicly, to use resources I now had in abundance to make her life as difficult as she'd tried to make mine. I didn't. The divorce settled quietly, fairly under the law, and I made sure she wasn't left with nothing, not because she deserved my generosity, but because I refused to let what she did turn me into someone I wouldn't recognize in the mirror. Bitterness is a debt that charges you interest for the rest of your life, and I decided I wasn't going to keep paying it just to punish someone who'd already handed me the receipts of exactly who she was. I forgave her. I want to be precise about what that means, because forgiveness gets misunderstood constantly. It didn't mean I let her back into my life. It didn't mean we stayed friends, or that I ever fully trusted her again, or that the door between us stayed open even a crack. It meant I stopped needing her to suffer in order for me to feel okay. That's a very different thing than reconciliation, and it's the only version of forgiveness that ever actually sets you free, instead of quietly chaining you to the person who hurt you. The life I built after that didn't look anything like the one I'd imagined the night I found that ticket. It looked better, in the ways that matter, because it was finally built entirely on the truth. I went to the doctor, the one appointment I'd skipped for so long to save $80, and the tightness in my chest turned out to be exactly what I'd feared, a cardiac condition inherited from my father, caught early enough this time to actually treat, because I finally had both the money and the will to take care of the body that had carried me through everything. I think about that often. The same ticket that exposed the worst betrayal of my life also gave me back years I might not have had otherwise. I bought a house, nothing extravagant, because after everything I'd learned, extravagance had lost its appeal. But I built a kitchen in it, real marble island, the kind from the magazines, not for the woman who once dreamed about it and never got to have it, but for myself and for my mother, who cried the first time she cooked in it with me, because she remembered every year we didn't have enough, and this was proof that all of it had led somewhere worth arriving at. I started a small scholarship fund in my father's name for kids from families like the one I grew up in, kids whose parents work concrete and double shifts and never get to see their numbers mean anything. Every spring, I sit across from 4 or 5 of them, and I watch their faces when they realize someone believed in them before they'd proven anything. And I understand, finally, completely, what my father meant all those years playing the same 6 numbers every Friday. It was never really about winning. It was about refusing to stop hoping, quietly, faithfully, even when nothing around you gives you a reason to. I'm with someone now. I won't say much about her because some things deserve to stay private, protected the way I once protected everything else in silence. What I will say is that she knows about the second job I used to hide, and the doctor's visits I used to skip, and the envelope in my glove box, because I don't carry secrets like that anymore. I learned the hard way what silence, even well-intentioned silence, can cost you, and what happens when the people around that silence decide to use it against you instead of honoring it. So here's what I want to leave you with because I think it matters more than any of the details of what happened to me. Somewhere out there tonight, someone is quietly sacrificing everything for a person who has already stopped choosing them back, and they don't know it yet. Somewhere out there, someone is being underestimated by people who assume their quiet means weak, when really it just means they haven't shown you yet what they're capable of when everything falls apart. And somewhere out there, someone is sitting on their own version of that gas station ticket. Not necessarily money, maybe just the truth, maybe just the courage to finally look at what they've been avoiding. And they're one honest look away from finding out that the very thing meant to destroy them is about to become the thing that finally sets them free. I walked into that bedroom that Friday night carrying $10 million and the best news of my life. I walked out of it carrying the truth instead, and it turned out the truth was worth more than any number ever printed on a piece of paper. If there's one thing I'd want you to remember from all of this, it's this. The people who count on you never seeing it coming are always underestimating what you're capable of once you finally do. Thanks for watching. Kindly drop a comment on where you're watching from and the best part of the story and lesson you learned from the video.